Hello out there. Welcome to Pastor Connection Live. I'm Pastor Travis Schroeder. This is my guest here this evening, Reverend Brad Schowengerdt. This is our second attempt at doing this. Our first one went a little longer than we had originally planned, so we're going to shorten this one up quite a bit. You're going to get basically the same questions that I had asked him before, but like I said, we're trying to make this a little shorter so that we can capture an audience a little bit better. That was some of the suggestions that were given after our first attempt with an almost hour-long event. So we're gonna shoot for not quite an hour long this time. But as I said, I'm Pastor Travis Schroeder. I'm the pastor of Chaffee Assembly of God here in Chaffee, Missouri, and we've created this page to be able to reach out and connect pastors, ministers, missionaries, youth pastors, kids pastors, to connect ministers basically to people that are out there that might want to know some more information about the pastors that are out in the world. We're going to conquer some, in the future, we'll conquer questions about the Bible. Some may be what we consider simple, may be very difficult for somebody else to understand, and some things are just difficult to talk about. And so that's kind of the idea of what we're doing here with this page. So without taking up any more time explaining all that wonderful stuff, I'd like to again introduce my guest here, Reverend Brad Schowengerdt. He's from Clyde First Assembly in Clyde, Texas. Tell us a little bit about your ministry and what you do down there at Clyde, Texas.
Well, like you said, I'm the pastor of First Assembly in Clyde. Clyde's right outside of Abilene, just about 8 miles or so.
Okay.
And we're a small church, but we're a happy church, and we're growing. And it's a town, like I said, around 4,000 people. And so our ministry is just to reach the town, reach the neighborhoods. We've started some kids programs that weren't there before, and getting ready to have a Christmas program here in December 18th. So it's exciting. Good things are happening.
Well, that's awesome. So so you say you're reaching out in the community.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you do for outreach? I mean, we're not just reaching out to we're reaching out to everybody we can, and sometimes pastors are looking for ideas of things to do in outreach. And I know you've done a couple of really nifty things that I'd never heard of before. So what is
Well,
it that
we
you
do what we're calling Meet Your Neighbor.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting. My wife, when she was in college, and she had her friends from college, and of course they all graduate and they all move off and they go to different careers or different areas to fulfill their career. And she noticed on Facebook that one of the young ladies that she went to school with, her and her husband moved to a new town and they didn't know anybody. So they started a certain Thursday of every month, first, second, third, whatever it is, for their neighborhood they moved into. They started having these neighborhood get-togethers to get to know their neighbors. And now they weren't doing it for the church. I don't even know if they're Christians or not. But they were just wanting to meet their neighbors. And I got to thinking, well, if the world can do that and our society can do that just to get to know each other, then the church can do that too. Because after several months, it just became a standard thing. The whole neighborhood would know, second Thursday or whatever number it was, everybody just goes to this person's house and they do different things. So we decided to do that from the church. And so what we've done is with Meet Your Neighbor is we've taken different families from the church, and we're still going through all of the homes in our church. I'm hoping that every family will do it. But it's just a front yard thing only. We do it for like an hour and a half. We hand out flyers around the neighborhood. We do hot dogs and bottles of water and stuff, and they can just come and go as you please. The idea is for the neighbors to get to know each other. So now you have a community event that's happening within the community, and then it's sponsored by First Assembly. We provide the hot dogs, and then we show up and we do all of the work so that the person who lives there can be the host and they don't have to do the work. And then in the meantime, we can also invite them to church. It's been a good thing.
So you're able to reach out into the community and invite people to come
Absolutely.
to church, and they know that you're the one sponsoring it. But you're filling in a gap in something that in our modern day society that has been kind of lost, where people just don't know their neighbors anymore.
That's right.
It's a rare thing to even know the person across the street or your next door neighbor, unless something goes wrong, and then you know your neighbor really well. But
and
but
what
in
we
a lot of
found
cases, you
is
don't know anybody.
what we found in every area is going to be different.
Right.
But in Clyde, as we go and we knock on doors, people are very receptive to it. And of course, once they realize you're not selling anything or you're not trying to get them to go anywhere, like to, we don't invite them to church at that moment. We're inviting them to the neighborhood. Hey, do you know so-and-so who lives up there? And, they know, at least know where the house is, right? They may not know the person. And so we've had very good reception. They'll say, wow, we've never heard of this, or I haven't heard of this since I was a kid, or all kinds of things like that, and it's been very receptive. So
That's awesome.
it's been good, and it fills that gap of the neighborhoods of people getting back to knowing each other.
Right.
So
So that's awesome. That's awesome. And see, that's something that we should be able to try here. I'd love to do something like that. And it does. I don't think with something like that, it doesn't matter how big the church is or the small the church is, that
Right.
you could still do something like that.
Right.
I mean, larger churches have more like small groups, and so maybe the small group could get involved in more something
Right.
like that. So
Yeah.
hey, that's a really great
My
idea.
suggestion, if anybody else wants to try that, is to keep it simple. Sometimes we just make things too difficult.
Mhm.
And so we just do hot dogs, we do bottles of water, some chips. It's very simple. We made a simple flyer. My wife made it up. I mean, it's kind of catchy. It looks nice. But it's simple.
Mhm.
We don't, especially if you want other people in the church to do something. If you make it so elaborate and they look at your yard and they think, well, I could never do that, then they're not going to volunteer. So we just keep it simple.
Right.
And people like simple.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so you're a pastor, which comes with interesting things. We decided when we started talking about this that we wouldn't ask things like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you as a pastor, or what thing gets on your nerves the most. Maybe we should have that and only invite pastors. but we're not going to ask those kind of questions today. But I just wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
Your heart is ministry. Your heart is to reach people. Pastors, a lot of people think that pastors are just out to get your money. And really, we're not. We just want to get to know people. And we want to see people come to the Lord, right?
Right.
And so that's what our goal is. Just kind of going down, I have some different questions I want to ask, because everybody's got a different thing that they like in the Bible. They got a different story, different Bible verses that speak to them. So I want to ask you a couple of things here. What's your favorite Bible verse, and why is that your favorite Bible verse?
Well, my favorite Bible verse is Jeremiah 33:3. And it simply says, call on me and I will answer you, and I will show you great and mighty things that you do not know. I believe it says, call on my name. I'm just kind of quoting there. But I love that verse because, if it just said, call on me and I'll answer you, I mean, it's a phenomenal verse.
Right.
Because I don't know how many times in my life I've had to call on him, and he's answered me. He's been there to comfort me or given a solution or, things like that. And but then it goes on and says, I will show you great and mighty things. And we all like to see great and mighty things.
Right.
So I have a God who can do great and mighty things.
Awesome.
And he can show me that. And then he can show me things that I don't know, which help me. It gives me better character. It helps me understand him. It helps me to help other people to understand things that I don't know. And it's a powerful verse.
So wait a minute. So what you're saying is, as a pastor, you don't know everything?
I don't know everything.
Oh, okay.
No.
But so you're still constantly seeking after God yourself.
Right.
Right.
That's
and,
right.
And working on your relationship with God, and in the meantime, trying to help other people understand
That's
God
right.
too. So
That's
see,
right.
that's awesome.
Yep.
Bible characters. So you've got your favorite Bible verse, and then there's different characters in the Bible, and all these different crazy guys and gals throughout the Bible that has done different things. Which character and their kind of story would be your favorite?
My favorite character is Peter.
Peter.
And it's just simply because I feel like I relate to Peter. Peter spent most of his time in his training period with his foot in his mouth, and I have a tendency to speak first and think second.
Yeah.
And
I can verify that. I've known him for a long time.
Yes. So I can relate to that. I can relate to the big, huge statements. I can relate to the wanting to do something huge and kind of stepping out into the flesh a little bit and having to be pulled back. I can relate to when Jesus told Peter, when Peter said, you are the Son of God. When Jesus asked, who do you say that I am? Peter says, well, you are the Son of God. And so Jesus commends him, says that, you only knew this because of divine revelation from God. So he's telling Peter, listen, you heard from God right now. You just spoke on that. That's good. And then pretty much within the same paragraph, same conversation, as Jesus is saying that he's getting ready to leave and Peter speaks up, Jesus has to turn around and rebuke him. And so I can understand that. I can relate to that. I guess it's just my personality. So I like Peter.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then Peter had an awesome reform. And Peter, the day of Pentecost and that sermon that he preached. Now, I can't relate to having 3,000 people at one time coming to find Christ, but I would love to have that happen someday. I think that's every minister's dream, right?
Yeah.
Is to one sermon, 3,000 people come flocking to the altar.
Yeah. Well, but in his story, it's just awesome because you've got this thick-headed guy that always putting his foot in his mouth, messes up so much, but when he gets baptized in the Holy Ghost,
he's on fire.
He's on fire,
he
preaches the gospel. Yeah, 3,000 people get saved that day, and then more. It just keeps going, and it keeps going, and keeps preaching.
Well, and that's what the book of Acts says. The book of Acts says that daily numbers were added to the church.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
So I like Peter.
I love Peter as well. So that's really good. So the next couple of questions are kind of on the downside. Okay. So we all preach sermons. I mean, pastors preach sermons. Not everybody preaches sermons, but as a pastor, you preach many sermons. I've heard you preach many different ones. Preached one here at our church just this morning. Phenomenal. Thought it was great. Spirit was moving really good. But there's always that one sermon that really just, we can't ever get out of our mind. It's like, why did I do that? What was I thinking?
How do I erase that from time?
So my question for you on that is just to kind of show us that you're a man, you're a person, and sometimes we make mistakes too. What would have been your worst sermon that you ever done?
My worst sermon, and my family, my parents will probably be nodding their head yes to this one. It was I didn't go to a lot of Bible college, but I did go up to Trinity Bible College in Ellendale, North Dakota for a while. And when I was a freshman, was up there, and of course, you have to, Bible degree, you were supposed to preach so many times within that 4 years to get your degree. So when I came back on a holiday trip or whatever, my dad let me preach at his church, and he was the contemporary pastor at a church in Falls City, Nebraska, and so he preached the second service, and he let me preach, and what I preached on was Dick Eastman's The Hour That Changed the World. It's my favorite book, and I just put a plug in for that. Everybody, if you need a book to read, that's an awesome book. It's Dick Eastman, The Hour That Changed the World. And I've taught it at your church. I've taught it at my church. I've taught it at Sunday school when I taught that. I've taught it many different times. And basically, what it is the 12 things you can do for 5 minutes. And if you do that, you can pray for an hour. And it's an awesome study. The problem was I tried, newly preaching. I tried to come home and preach the entire book in one sermon, and it's meant for a series or a Bible study. And and then I got confused on the clock, and because I was nervous, and I honestly only meant to preach for 15, 20 minutes, but every time I looked up, it looked like the hand hadn't moved, when honestly it had gone all the way around the clock and came back to the last time I had looked at it. I ended up preaching for over an hour, and I had people falling asleep. It was really bad. I mean, I look back, it's almost embarrassing. And so when I brought the sheet to the senior pastor for him to fill out for me to take back to get credit back to school, he's like, well, it was good content, but you preached kind of long. So, that was my worst by far.
There you go. Well, that kind of goes along with why we're redoing this video.
Yes.
And if you watch the second half of the first video, you'll see that we're really having the same conversation now, but
yes, we are.
It's not taking as long.
That's
because,
right.
I learned that I talk a lot.
Yes, Travis is long-winded.
Yes, and which is kind of goes with being a pastor. Pastors
it is.
tend to be long-winded and want to talk about a lot of stuff. But so you've got your worst sermon ever, and that's something that we can kind of laugh about and joke around about. But to let us know that you kind of still relate, even more with what some people would just call the average Joe. Well, the truth is in ministry, where just because I've got a special calling for ministry, the Bible tells us as teachers or preachers, we are held to a little bit of a higher standard, we're still people.
Mhm.
And we still have fears, and so rather than using the word fear, we decided to use the word concerns.
Mhm.
So, in your ministry, in your life even, what would be your greatest concern?
Greatest concern in ministry? Well, my greatest concern before I became a pastor, and it gets me a lot, is the preparation. 3 messages a week. Now, I know a lot of churches are going to not as many services, but I still stand to the traditional Sunday morning, Sunday night, and a Wednesday night Bible study. And I like that, and I don't know if I'll ever get away from that. Now, times will change. I'm not saying I will or won't. I like that. So.
Right.
And that's what scared me. That's what has kept me from being a pastor for so long. Was am I going to hear from God 3 times every week? I mean, come on, 3 times, you know? And that scared me. In fact, I even went to our pastor at the time. We were both at Faith, and it was Pastor Snavely. And I went to him one time, and I said, how do you do it? Three sermons a week? And he took me into his office, and he showed me his organization skills on how he lists all his sermons, and they're all, in alphabetical order, in order by the Bible, and he's got them, on his statistician sheet, and he's got them numbered, and I'm like, this is scaring me even more. This isn't helping. It's not helping at all. But I'll tell you what, if we give God our fears, I mean, and we really just say, God, you know what, whatever you call me to do, mm-hmm. I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to trust you from whatever I'm afraid of. God comes through. Yeah. He does. Absolutely. The Holy Spirit comes through. And I've been pastoring this church now for just a few weeks over a year. And I have not had one week where I have not had the messages that I needed to have. Not one time. And there's been a few times that I have procrastinated, let the flesh come in, and it comes down to the last minute, and he says, you know what? I'm going to show you grace, and I'm going to give you something anyway. You don't deserve it, but I'm going to give you something. And so God's good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So in the last couple of things here, as a pastor, that kind of automatically gives you the label of a Christian, somebody that believes in God. So the question that I have for you is really a general question. Why God? What makes you believe in God?
Well, I believe in God because I've had experiences where He's real. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the fact that the God that we serve, that you and I serve, He's real. He's alive. He's not dead.
Right.
And I have had experience after experience after experience where He has showed up in an amazing way. There's the miracles and all of those things. I mean, even Jesus in the Bible, He would do miracles and signs and then would teach. Because He's a real God, and He's there to show people things. And I mean, it did help for me that I grew up in a Christian home with amazing parents that are still Christians. That my dad's a pastor. They have their own church out in Wyoming, and they taught me a lot. But it still comes down to the fact that I had to make my own decision. Mm-hmm. It still came down to the fact that I had to decide, God, you can't get into heaven because your parents or your grandparents took you to church when you were a kid.
Right.
Okay? It just doesn't work that way. I had to make the decision. So when you read the Scripture, when you read the Word of God, when you say, I'm going to give this a try, God shows up. And He shows that He's real. And that's the thing, he's real. He's not fiction. It's not a fictional book that you read. It's not watching a superhero movie. This is real stuff.
Right.
And he's been there for me in everything. And it's kind of a hard question to answer. Why God? He's real, and He shows Himself to be real.
Good answer.
Right.
Good answer. So, well, I think that's all the questions I have for you tonight.
Okay.
I hope that this shorter version is a little better, and maybe we can get more folks to kind of stay attentive on the shorter version. Want to put a couple plugs in real quick as we close out the video. If you've made it this far, you deserve to know. Both of us are on Facebook. You can find him at Brad Schowengerdt on Facebook, and I'm Travis Schroeder on Facebook. And like I said, he's in Clyde, Texas. I'm in Chaffee, Missouri. Make sure that you look up a few different things. If you want more information, we're both Assemblies of God pastors. This Pastor Connection group is not going to be just Assemblies of God pastors, but I do happen to know quite a few, so there'll probably be quite a few that come on. I've already had a good feedback from many different ministers that have commented over the past few days that they'd like to do one of these interviews, so we're going to be reaching out. Some of them may be just really short, and some of them may be a little longer, like this one. We're going to avoid the hour-long ones like we did before. But look us up on Facebook. You can look up my church page, Chaffee Assembly of God. And if you'd like more information about us, if you'd like more information about the Assemblies of God itself, you can go to ag.org. Want to put a plug in also. If you go to theacts64.com, there's a conference coming up in the first week of January. It's called the Acts 64 Conference. Very awesome event that's going on in Texarkana, Texas. The hotels are filling up fast, but it's a free event in Texarkana. We've got many different speakers that'll be there, including Thomas Trask will be there, and we're excited about going. Brad and I are going to be down there visiting and being ministered to. It's a good time for ministers to go, anybody, not just ministers,
Right.
but for somebody to go and be ministered to. So I'm excited to see what God has in store for us. Brad, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Pastor Connection Live, and I'm sure we'll see you again in the future. God bless.
All right.
You guys.